Want to see how this happened? What about this? Or this? In this episode, we've got collisions, close calls, cart demons, and more, so buckle up for some of the best submissions we've ever received. Brian was driving through a construction zone on an interstate highway. As he entered an area with concrete barriers on both sides and nothing resembling a shoulder, traffic suddenly slowed way down. Brian slowed down safely, and so did the Kia driver behind him, but the driver of a Nissan SUV wasn't paying attention and slammed into the Kia, pushing it into Brian's Jeep as well. Brian had tried to make room in case something like this happened, but it wasn't enough to completely avoid the collision. Thankfully, he was able to avoid hitting the next car, and his steel bumper wasn't damaged. Thankfully, nobody was injured in the collision. Brian left after checking on the other drivers, but he has no idea how they went about cleaning up the accident, unless a tow truck drove backward down the highway to reach it. Chris was driving in Louisiana when a pickup truck turned across their lane from the center turn lane, giving him no chance to avoid a collision. The other driver was an elderly man driving his brother's new pickup. They exchanged information, and Chris is now waiting for his Jeep Grand Cherokee to be evaluated by insurance. This was Chris's first vehicle accident, and he told us he highly recommends a dashcam to everyone he knows. If you need one, check the link in the description for the model we recommend. This submitter was headed up a highway on-ramp when they watched the driver of an SUV bounce off a concrete barrier. Our submitter kept their distance just in case the SUV driver was planning on playing a game of Pong with their vehicle. In case you were wondering about our submitter's name, they recently switched from driving a Honda to a Chevy Bolt with hopes of driving a Tesla one day. They told us, "All I know is I'm never going back to ICE." ID John was headed home from work in his VW ID4 and had just entered the carpool lane. Suddenly, he watched an oncoming pickup truck collide with a BMW before hitting the median barrier and being sent tumbling. ID John was worried the truck might flip over the barrier, but it did its job and kept the truck on the correct side of the highway. The pickup ended up completely on its roof in the middle lane of the highway. ID John circled back to the accident scene to offer his dashcam footage, and first responders were already cleaning up the wrecked truck. Jeffrey was driving his Lincoln SUV when he drove through an intersection where the street was offset on the other side. He wasn't expecting the offset, and when he hit a patch of grass, he lost control and swerved across the street, hit a culvert, and launched into a fence. His SUV was totaled, but he wasn't injured in the crash. Kenny was waiting to turn left after leaving a tire shop. When the light turned green, a black Hyundai ran the red light right in front of him, nearly T-boning him in the process.
Ooh! Unbelievable.
Thankfully, Kenny was able to slam on the brakes and avoid a collision before continuing on his way home. Mike was on his way to the Dodge dealership where he works. As he was approaching a gas station, the driver of a car in the far left lane cut across and hit Mike's Dodge Charger, sending it into the end of a guardrail. Police responded and took a report, and Mike's coworkers from the dealership came by to make sure he was okay. Repairing his Charger will cost around $5,000 US. Mike wanted to shout out his coworkers for checking on him, as well as his wife Tiffany, who he married just 2 days later. Congrats! Kennedy was leaving a parking garage on Black Friday when she watched the driver of a GMC Sierra hit a sports car. At first, the pickup driver pulled over and told her he would leave a note, but when she drove by later, she didn't find one. She left a note for the driver and sent them her dashcam footage when they contacted her later. Raymond had just heard someone tell him about an accident he'd caused and warn him to watch for bad drivers. Minutes later, that same guy hit him. The Acura driver tried to blame the whole thing on the pickup truck next to him, but Raymond told him he has footage of the accident. He then accepted full responsibility. His insurance provider is paying $1,000 to fix Raymond's Hyundai Elantra while he pays for a rental car for Raymond out of his own pocket. Raymond told us, having a dash cam makes this whole process so much easier. Bob was driving in Australia when another driver made a U-turn from the outside lane. Bob told us that in Australia, U-turns must be made from the inside lane, and I think this is why. The other driver claimed Bob was speeding, but his dashcam footage proved he'd been obeying the speed limit. Repairing his Subaru WRX cost over $12,000, but the other driver's insurance covered it all. Bob told us, a $50 dashcam saved me from an $18,000 insurance claim. In Australian dollars, of course.
That Tesla man can't drive. That Tesla man can't drive.
Robert was exiting I-80 toward I-580 when he spotted this week's Tesla behaving badly. The Tesla crossed a lane and the gore point to reach the exit at the last second. Robert told us it then plugged up the left lane for a few miles and he kept a watchful eye on it until he had an opportunity to pass. Alex was headed to pick up his girlfriend at school when the driver in front of him changed lanes without signaling, then turned left with signal from the right turn-only lane. Shout out to Alex's girlfriend, Sophia. Jack was getting back onto the road after stopping to put an address in his GPS. He let a Hyundai Sonata pass and thought it was pulling into a parking lot, but then it made a U-turn across the road. Jack stood on the brakes but couldn't avoid a collision. The other driver was found to be 100% at fault, but he's thankful she was very nice throughout the ordeal. Tom was driving through the bomb cyclone with his family for Christmas at Grandma's house when they watched another driver overcorrect before spinning off the road. Tom notified the state police and they told him they had someone just a few minutes away. Moments later, they saw them headed that direction. Mike was in line to make a left turn at a traffic light. When it turned green, a Honda driver one lane over cut in front of him to turn left. Mike asked for a shout out for his sons Aaron and Cameron. Dylan was driving along and minding his own business when a young fox decided to cross the road in front of him. What a cute little guy. Dylan wanted to shout out his girlfriend Kaylee. Nate and Ash were stopped at a red light when they watched a pickup with a green left arrow make a U-turn. When an SUV driver with a green right arrow got upset and honked, the pickup hit the brakes and the SUV rear-ended it. Nate and Ash want to know who's at fault in this situation. Both vehicles had protected turn arrows, but the SUV driver honked, the pickup driver brake checked, and the SUV was following too closely. What do you think? They called the state police and sent their footage to the responding trooper. They asked us to shout out Ash's daughters, Nora and Ania. Speaking of cops, check out what Robert filmed with his dash cam. The fleeing SUV is missing a tire, by the way. Oh, I'm sorry, did you think that was all of them? We all know you need at least a dozen for a proper chase. Come on, one more? There we go. A submitter with a truly great name was headed home with his Chipotle order and was only a minute from his house. That's when someone leaving McDonald's pulled out in front of him. Ben swerved to avoid a collision, but the SUV still hit the side of his Ford Fusion. Police were quick to respond, and thankfully there were no injuries. His car is still drivable while he waits on his insurance claim. Ben told us he'd only bought this dashcam 2 weeks before this happened. He wanted to shout out his girlfriend Maggie, who always drives for date night because he hates traffic. I wonder why. Looks like the fight against the cart demon is far from over. Sakeo and his friend spotted a cart wandering away from a Walmart during a tornado watch when it was suddenly hit by traffic. See you in the trenches.